This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, truth seekers and true crime junkies. Nanette Bartow here with another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. Some cleanup from last week and some interesting news. They have yet come out with another purported suspect for the Zodiac killer. There's an author out there. I'm not even going to give him credence by mentioning his name, but if you do come across a book that mentions a man named Paul Dorr, this will be something I will be working on here shortly in the future. We are looking to obtain handwriting samples from the family. I was notified about this particular suspect last week in regards to it being a neighbor of my niece, actually, who grew up in the family home that was owned by her parents, that was owned by their parents, and they had lived basically just about the same amount of time, I would assume, in that neighborhood right next door to the man named Paul Dorr, D-O-E-R-R, who is now being claimed to have possibly have been the Zodiac. I know that the daughter is in the state right now attempting to clear his name. I'm hoping to make contact with her through the family and friends of my family, and then that way we can do a handwriting examination and put this to rest. Either way, another suspect pops up, it seems like every other day, but it is usually pretty easy to rule them out if you do a little bit of legwork. We are back this week. We're going to be discussing the ciphers on the Cheri Jo Bates communications with Harriette Sucher. I am just going to briefly cover some of the information from the FBI FOIA files, and that way we get a little bit of a background on it. One of the in the presentation, if we bring that up right now, what we'll see is I talked a little bit about this last week. I did put a link up there at the top of the page, and it looks as though they had actually taken a look at another solve by an individual who attempted to do a transposition and double encryption. And their plight at the end of it was the cryptoanalysis department had determined that a transposition and double encryption would not yield plain text words. So if individuals are out there attempting to solve this by transposing the symbol into a letter and then a double encryption type method, you would not actually come up with the word encryption or double. You're going to come up with more like an acronym, and then that acronym would actually yield a message. And maybe that even needs to be anagrammed. Again, this is not my forte, but this is just what I'm picking up from the FBI files. So basically, we are showing that one of the letters that actually came in regards to the Cheri Jo Bates here, they had actually sent it off. It says results cryptanalysis exam separate. So they are clearly running a cryptanalysis on all of these messages, including the envelopes, I'm assuming, looking for any internal messages inside of these, though I've never seen not one result in the FOIA file that says we came up with this. So that is likely something they have withheld from the public altogether. So a photocopy of a postcard bearing out typewritten address from Berkeley, California. Again, no ciphertext is extended, but they are actually looking at initial letters of the words, first, second, third letter, last letters of words, line beginnings, line endings, and no extraneous markings. So they are definitely checking these things out for different types of messages that might be found on these documents. outside of it. So it looks like this other one was a photocopy. These ones went to San Francisco, but again, we can see cryptanalysis right here at the very bottom of this document, cryptanalysis exam separate. So with that, I would like to introduce Harriette Sucher in regards to the ciphers and codes that she has discovered here on this particular document. And it looks like we're looking at the confession letter that was sent to the Enterprise and the police department in the Cheri Jo Bates case.
Well, good morning again.
Good morning.
Yeah, this one that you have on your slide, it blew me away because we were all believing that the three-part cipher came out in 1969 and that it wasn't available during the confession letter. But there's going to be some future things we'll discuss probably in future shows. I found out, I think about a little over a year ago, that there was going to be the Zodiac world coming out as of when Nixon was elected. And so that when I saw this, I said, this is now making sense to me as to how we could have a Z408 grill cipher before Zodiac became famous.
Well, and that brings up another interesting point. We also have Nolan Del Campo with here. If we could pull that presentation down and get everybody on screen, I'd like to talk a little bit about that. You actually believe that they had this named the Zodiac, Harriette? Is Harriette?
Oh yeah. They
Harriette?
They were getting ready. That's what I'm finding. That's what I'm seeing, that that Nixon was now elected and they were already prepping this, that there was going to be future big stories of who they were going after. And one of the things was the three-part cipher.
So you're not in essence saying that they had already named it Zodiac. You're just saying that the whole perpetration...
No, they named it Zodiac, but there was future big stories going to come across starting in 1969, and who was going to be headlines as who was killed. And I was like, okay, now this is making sense. How I was just doing stabs in the dark when I was looking at the confession letter. I said, gee, that's funny. I think if I turn this sideways, I think it's 3-to-1 for each, how do I explain it? A position of each of the letters that was typed up, in the confession letter, and you turn it sideways, and I was finding it was matching 3-to-1 and hitting things on the three-part cipher. And then anagram, and I came out with a message.
Have you lost your video, Harriette? Can we see Harriette on?
Let's see what's going on here.
I don't know. I don't see you. I just see me and Nolan.
It says I'm in the show, but
your camera is off. It says.
Oh, how do I do that?
You must have unplugged something in your movement, but he says your camera is off. Okay. I would go right below the audio box should be a box that says mute, stop cam, and settings.
Okay. Oh, start cam. Let's go. How do I do that? Oh, there I am.
Oh, yay. Okay. Hi. And let me say good morning.
It may be somebody who doesn't want me on.
I wanted to go ahead and welcome Nolan as well. Good morning, Nolan.
Good morning, Annette. Good morning, Harriette.
Does it shock you
again?
Does it shock you, Nolan, that she's coming up with messages that indicate that this was a future plan or plot?
No. Nothing shocks me anymore.
Well, we keep trying to figure out how the FBI knew that the Zodiac was premeditating or predicting his future crimes in his communications. And she is actually tapped into some of that, not only naming who's next, but what is around the corner and what is coming up. So I just was a little more interested in how they had already labeled it Zodiac, because I was under the impression that that was what the newspapers named him.
That was going to be what the newspapers were naming him, and it was
gonna
run through the Chronicle, but the Chronicle was actually quietly run by, because I guess who? William Randolph Hearst. So you
Right.
didn't, Chronicle
No,
didn't
no,
survive in
no.
San Francisco without his approval. So
Actually, Hearst ran the Examiner. The
yeah, he ran
Chronicle
the
was run by
Examiner, but
different
he
people.
was
Yeah,
in an
yeah.
agreement with the Chronicle. I'll keep you alive if you do this.
Okay,
You know.
yeah.
Oh, so paid protection, basically.
Well, I think that if I remember correctly, because I'm from San Francisco, I think the Chronicle had like the top third in the mornings, and then the Examiner ran in the evenings. So they got the more bigger crowd, but the Chronicle was always being promoted, even by the Examiner. They had the weekend
Gotcha.
newspapers combined. So
Well, yeah,
Well,
later they combined on weekends, yes.
mhm.
I also wondered because the desktop poem, the last two letters on it is RH, which I did actually allude to a possibility of Randolph Hearst, because I do believe there's a huge media input or involvement surrounding the. I mean, they're the ones that made the money off these cases. So
They sure did. Movies,
So
TVs. I mean, yeah.
if I could pipe in, coincidentally, I just finished a book by Talbot, the same author that wrote Brothers on the Kennedys and wrote the history of the CIA, the Devil's Chessboard. Anyway, it's called Season of the Witch. It's on the history of San Francisco. And so he goes into the Chronicle, the Examiner, Hearst, all the various things that went on. He touches on Zodiac, touches on Manson. There's a big, a lot of it deals with Jim Jones and then the murders of Alioto and Harvey Milk and all that stuff. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. Season of the Witch. But,
well, then that's not shocking me then, because I did indicate when I attempted to do an FBI FOIA search on Cheri Jo Bates, I came up with nothing under her name. When I ran her last name, I came up with all kinds of things, including the Dominguez, Edwards and Dominguez, Domingos. When I ran Domingos, I came up with the same thing, literally. On the Jones files, on Manson, on DB Cooper, all of these files came up under their name when I searched it instead of files on them. So I'm wondering what that connection is there as well.
All I know is recently I contacted because of what I was doing that are probably not, we're not probably going to cover it exactly, but I said, I'm seeing this and decrypting, so to speak, your envelopes I was contacting Riverside, and I was saying, this is saying who killed her and why, and so I just did what I could. But now it's interesting that you said you can't really, if you do Cheri Jo Bates FOIA files, you don't find anything now. But if you just do Bates, you find something.
Right. And I also noticed as well is that the Texarkana Phantom murders, you're not finding the individual's name in there. You're actually finding Texarkana Phantom Moonlight murders. And I found 2 files for them that I intend on going back, researching, see if there's anything probative that I could bring up or bring to the table, because there wasn't a lot of information that I had on the Texarkana Phantom murders. But let's go. I'm going to go ahead and read your message. I'm going to put this back, the presentation back up. I'm going to read your solve and then we can discuss it. So, backwards. So, so the grill cipher that I received from Harriette Sucher says, my P died, so I gave RRTTO Lee Bowers IO 10cc Numbatol IO its aim on coffee. And so what she had ciphered that to mean was, my president died, so I gave railroad train tracks operator Lee Bowers Jr. in his order 10cc Numbatol, years of documents in order, its aim on coffee. All right, let's go back to Harriette. Can you explain that for us?
That was coming. And I was like, okay, I've been to the JFK conferences, and I know, that a lot of people were saying that Lee Bowers Jr. was one of the witnesses who says that he heard or thought he saw a couple of other people, and that he did basically months of documents for the Warren Commission. So that's years, this is now a couple of years later. And he done shows, and but Jack is saying that he was one of the shooters aiming from the railroad tracks. And Lee Bowers Jr., on the night he died, did go stop for coffee and something to eat. And then as he was dying because of a mysterious accident where he ran off the road, he even told the those attending to him that he thought he was poisoned when he went to get something to eat. So there's actually that confirmation that he said, I think I was poisoned on purpose, and I think somebody put something in my food, and then he died. It was the accident and then the combination of being under the influence of something that was killing him.
Lee Bowers was an eyewitness to the Kennedy assassination. He worked in the tower in the railroad yard behind the grassy knoll, behind the picket fence, and he had a vantage point probably about 30 feet high. So he saw lots of activity that day, and he did testify before the Warren Commission. But they tried to minimize the value of his testimony. He also was the one that pointed out where he thought maybe the three tramps had gone to. And of course, yes, they did find the three tramps in a boxcar in the same rail yard.
Wow.
Well,
and so how long after the shooting of Kennedy did he pass?
This is 3 years later. Yeah.
Great.
So that's why I was amazed as to how Jack and his world does this. This is mainly Jack, doing this. He was able to condense very briefly, my president died, so I gave the railroad train tracks operator Lee Bowers Jr. in his order the coffee that he was drinking, and then 10 cc Numertol shot in it, because he's saying that Lee Bowers Jr. was one of the shooters, and so he gave his aim on the coffee.
So people surrounding JFK thought he was the shooter?
Yeah, well, no, he's one of the shooters. There's quite a few more I've done of these cryptic messages where he's out of nowhere bringing up saying Lee Bowers Jr. was one of the shooters and he was in the railroad tracks with one of the other guys. So he's saying that he was one of the shooters. That's why he was
anti-Kennedy.
He was I don't think he was anti-Kennedy. He was just into the money, and then of course he became anti-Kennedy. There was a lot of people that were on the take there. So he was like,
that Bowers was too far away to be one of the actual assassins, because I think the kill shot, a lot of people believe, came from behind the picket fence on the grassy knoll, the one that blew his head out. But Bowers' tower was a good 50 yards beyond the fence. So it would have to be a really high-powered rifle. But he did.
No, he's saying that he got onto the railroad tracks and was shooting. And then there's another guy, because I've been there. Have you been there, Nolan?
No, I have not.
You should go there. You'll be amazed. You'll stand there and say, you'll be cussing. How could people be so stupid that they thought that the shots came from, because but if you go and you walk along the railroad tracks, you'll see all the possibilities of, somebody was shooting from here, somebody's shooting 100 feet away. It's amazing. So
did they keep the area similar to what it was? I mean, can you still go back there and kind of recreate the situation?
Oh, yeah, you can, except for the alleged area of the sewer shooter, and Jack says that Johnny Rosselli was he was the sewer shooter. They've changed the position of the sewer and the opening. It used to be like something like this, and then they minimized that, and they altered a section of the road, and you can't get in where you said the picket fence. There used to be a spot that you can go in underneath and walk through. And it was like according to those who used to live in that area that were there, they said you used to be able to go down and walk through the sewer system. It's the size of like a narrow bathroom. And yes, they were able to look for themselves out the sewer thing.
Wow.
But they changed that. That's the one thing that the city of Dallas changed.
And so who is Rosselli, Nolan?
Yeah. Well, Rosselli is a mob figure. He was one of the guys that the CIA and FBI contracted with to try and kill Castro. and
Oh.
he was affiliated with the Chicago mob primarily, but also had ties to Traficante in Florida and to Marcello in New Orleans. And Marcello basically controlled Dallas as well. But anyway, my take on Bowers is he was killed because he knew too much. I don't think he was a shooter, but he saw too much. And his testimony brought up too many things that embarrassed the Warren Commission. But you see during the time period, 64, 65, 66, all the way on up, various witnesses or journalists or other people get killed, either shot in the head outright, poisoned, suicided through drugs and alcohol. Various people just keep dying. And then even George de Mohrenschildt, before he was supposed to testify before some committee in the 70s, they said he shot himself, said he blew his own head off.
It was a suicide.
Yeah.
He was suicided.
And I bring him up because he was one of the handlers of Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas.
Oh. So what would be the benefit of knocking off Bowers 3 years later? Hasn't he said all there is to say at that point?
I think, wasn't he going to be one of the witnesses for the actual trial? Yeah, because I remember correctly. Yeah, I think I think he was, and so he was appearing to be anti-Kennedy, but he was on the take and he was connected, and so they took him out. They said,
who is he connected to?
He's connected to I think he's connected, actually, according to Jack's World, he's connected to Bates, who was the naval weapons training officer, who was connected to the people, Jack Kennedy's own Navy was against him. So yeah.
So Cheri,
really quick, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I just found out yesterday, I was watching a podcast on on Dorothy Kilgallen, who we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the journalist.
Right.
And she's also on What's My Line. And so the author of the books, he's written 2 books on Dorothy Kilgallen. His name is Mark Shaw. He did this podcast in Texas at the Allen Library. And he has actually dug up the transcripts, 2,000 pages, of the Jack Ruby trial. So they're out there on his website. So author Mark Shaw, he's an attorney as well, and he's dedicated his life to finding out the truth about Dorothy Kilgallen and the relationship to the JFK assassination. And he's actually, one of his sources got a guy from Texas obtained the transcripts of the Jack Ruby trial. So they're out there. They're available.
How much truth do you think they actually told in that trial?
Oh, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. And those that told the truth probably didn't live very long.
Well, and that, I mean, honestly, that I guess if he was about to be a witness in the trial, then yes, take him out. But wouldn't he have already given testimony to the Warren Commission, to other agencies? And so that could have been admitted, obviously, into the trial, his transcripts from those depositions. So it just seems rather redundant, or I don't know, unnecessary to kill somebody who's already got their word on record.
Well,
they kill a lot of people.
Yeah,
yeah.
And that brings up.
It's still the question of, okay, did Lee Harvey Oswald do this acting alone? Most people never really believed that anyway. It was the official story. It was a Warren Commission finding, but the people that actually did kill Kennedy wanted to shut up any potential witnesses. They just wanted everyone to shut up about it.
There was so many people on the take, including his own Navy people.
So do you think Cheri Jo Bates is kind of like some of these other, like Tim Miller's daughter and John Benet Ramsey, that they were killed or killed in order to affect the individual that was part of it, like her father, Bates?
Leaving out Tim Miller's daughter, because I'm doing the Texas I-45 murders. I think there's another reason why she was killed, and Jack
Okay.
he's knowing the information. But that's amazing that you bring that up, because I wouldn't have been able to answer that correctly. but Cheri Jo Bates, according to Jack, as I'm seeing when I did quite a few of these last year, she was considered a mafia princess or royalty, and she was getting involved with other people through the mobsters at the 1957 Get Well party, where nobody got to eat, where there was hundreds of people that showed up to Appalachia. And so she was involved with that, and she was going in the footsteps of her family. So Jack and his world took her out. So,
Gotcha.
The
yeah.
literature that I've read also said that was an ulterior motive. It wasn't just a random victim, that there's some other ties. I can't say exactly what they were, maybe through her dad, maybe through whatever.
Yeah, her dad was a bad guy.
I think that and then if you look at the letter, Bates had to die.
Right.
There was another reason, not that she just wasn't a random victim. No, I don't know. And she was young, and another curious thing about her is that she had a boyfriend in school in Northern California, and in college, and he was a couple of years older than her. She had just come back from a visit to see him in Northern California, but then told friends that she was going to the library to meet her boyfriend, which is it was obviously not her regular boyfriend. It was a different guy. So
wow.
Well, just wait until you find out who her boyfriend is, because her boyfriend also goes with her one of the future victims in 1970, Judith Thackeray. Her boyfriend was the same boyfriend as Cheri Jo Bates. That's why they did some testing on him.
Crazy.
So we will get to that at some point. I was like, no way. And that's why Judith Thackeray was taken out, because she also was connected to somehow to Donna Lass, because she was also a nurse. It's really strange. But then you know, and this, like I said, the last time we were on, it seems like you're going way out there in the fringes. And then when you start naming names and finding people, it's the same circle.
So then you know what? I think that's great that Nolan brought up the Bates had to die. I'm going to throw this up on throw the presentation up real quick and show them this particular cipher, and we'll talk about it. So the one of the 3 letters that were mailed, which is very Zodiac-esque, Bates had to die. There will be more. Harriette, if you want to go ahead and tell us what you were able to cipher that out to be.
Well, that ended up being, just like you brought up, saying that the FBI was scouring for ciphertext and cipher symbols for even the Bates letters. Well, this turned out, I was just doing stabs in the dark again. I was saying, okay, if this isn't working as an anagram, is this a cipher? Similar to what I found out about the same time period. I was realizing that you could cipher something from the 1940s, the Black Dahlia, that era. So anyways, that's what it ended up being. It ended up being the Zodiac cipher symbols with the corresponding code keys. And then you find the words because you anagram there. So that's what I did with this. And I will explain to the viewers, why is this done on the back of an envelope? Okay, so I'm still recovering from Clayton fire, but when I get inspired, I'm grabbing any pieces of paper. And I think I did this at the library. I said, well, this is all I have is the envelope. So
let's work on that.
The back of an envelope.
So your cipher basically says the two went the two went get well any, no one got to eat. And you stated, I believe it refers to the 1957 Mob Summit, and Mob said it was a get well party for a friend, but it was raided and none of the guests got to eat. Are you familiar with
that? Story was broke by the Oregonian when the Oregonian 15 years later, I think, gets the DB Cooper stuff going. But the Oregonian, one of the editors at the time was Bill Hilliard, and that for some reason the Oregonian broke that story. I think it became one of the top AP stories around the world.
And we talked about Bill Hilliard in some of the last Cipher Solves, correct?
Yeah.
And the Oregonian is one of the newspapers that one of the 4 D.B. Cooper letters were mailed to.
Definitely. So
Correct.
we're seeing, again, it sounds like we're getting frayed out way into the fringes.
Not to me, because everything is right up here.
And then the circles, and I was like, oh my goodness. So I wouldn't do that.
Really quick, Nolan, the mob summit, what were they doing there?
It was a junta with all the leaders, the mob dons from the different families, from Chicago, from Florida, from New Orleans, and it was in Appalachian, New York. And Harriette's right, it was raided and several people were arrested. A lot of people fled, some didn't get arrested, but that basically, up until that, J. Edgar Hoover had maintained there was no such thing as a Cosa Nostra or a mafia. And after that, it kind of made Hoover look bad, because everyone knew after that yes, there's organized crime and it's Italian families. Well, not just Italian, there's Irish, mafias. There's all kinds of mafias. The FBI was a mafia, if you ask me.
Right. So was the CIA, right?
So they got the information.
If they control the information and you have to pay them to protect you, they're mob, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Or
I
they
think
kill you because they don't like what you're saying or writing.
What's that?
Yeah.
They kill you because they don't like what you're saying or writing. Or
Right. Absolutely.
But
you know what? I actually just had an interesting take. Somebody had explained to me the other day that big deal between TikTok and China was not necessarily some problem with China as much as it was that there was no control over the information. It couldn't be censored. So that's why they wanted to either purchase it from China or take control of it somehow, because too many of us were capable of getting on there and telling the truth and nobody could control it. And that was an interesting take.
Yeah, information control.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting that I'm looking at this and seeing the cipher symbols here, and I was like, again, I was just thinking of again anagram, but we're going to what you just brought up at the beginning. The FBI was scouring for information on this, but in my opinion, they kind of already knew, but they couldn't really tell in details what was going on, because there was a to bring down those who bring down entities and was killing them. That's what the mob summit was about. We're finding out that they were pissed off at Bobby Kennedy and who he was working with. So they were trying to go through all the sources that they through their mob people to go. That's what they were going to kill him. And was starting in for sure in 1957.
Well, I think the theory was that the mob, Hoffa and his people, CIA, Hoover, I think they all disliked Bobby Kennedy a lot more than they disliked Jack.
Right.
But they figured, okay, if we kill Bobby Kennedy first, then Jack's still president. When I say Jack, John F. Kennedy, because that was his name. JFK, I'll call him. I won't call him Jack because there's not going to be confusion on that. So JFK would still be president, and he would do whatever to find out who killed his brother. But if you kill John F. JFK first, then that's going to basically cut the legs off of Robert. And
or as Marcelo said, you got to cut the head off.
Exactly. Go ahead. Yeah. Actually, there's problems with your audio right now. You might want to plug in better or something. And your video is kind of right.
You're cutting in and out. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's see. What can I do?
The audio sounds good now, but it's the video now there's an issue with.
It's like either a lag.
Maybe it's because too active.
What's that?
I said maybe it's because I'm moving around too much.
that shouldn't be an issue so much as if are you plugged in? Are you hardwired?
Yes, actually I am.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
you
actually
just-
seemed to have cleaned
it's
up
better
a little
now.
bit.
Yeah, I think that just
Yeah.
a little more.
I want to
Okay.
throw up letter number 2 from the 3 series of Cheri Jo Bates real quick on the presentation. And I want everybody to know the reason why Harriette was capable of coming up with different messages, even though the letter itself all says pretty much the same thing. Bates had to die, there will be more. She also includes the envelope and the addressing of the envelope in that solve. So on this particular letter, Harriette, I see that you indicated it says something like it's freezing here, snow/rain mix. Oh, that was that. It was freezing where you were.
Yeah.
All right. So what did you come up
sent
with
it
on
as
this one?
is.
What's that?
So I sent it as is. It was actually both were ciphers and then anagram, and so it's saying, here's the Bates had to die. There will be more, which appears to be 2 twos at the bottom. A lot of people were wondering, are those Z's or 2s? Or this was going on for years. So once I realized they were 2 twos, kind of camouflaged. So that's what I got was the 2 went to New England, get well, no one got to eat, or the 2 went to New England, get well party, no one got to eat. And then, then the next one is she had to die, there will be more. It's another cipher using the same Zodiac cipher symbols and the corresponding keys. So it says she seen NWTO get 10 GRRTT NOA, or she seen Naval Weapons Training Officer get 10 grand at the railroad tracks, New Orleans, Louisiana, and he was a Naval Weapons Training Officer. He did sometimes work out of Louisiana, her father. So it's saying that she saw him get the 10 grand, where there was this plan to kill the Kennedys. So it's what she saw and who she was involved with and who her father was involved with. But, he thought that he could use her as a ruse to make him look innocent and go walking along. That's my opinion. Go walking along the railroad tracks. Oh, he's there with the kid, and go meet somebody and shake hands. And there's the money.
So Bowers was the one that received the 10 grand?
No, she's seeing that the training officer got the 10 grand and
Her
that
dad.
grand and then he's going to move money because he's helping to kill the Kennedys.
So her
Jack
dad was the
Kennedy's
one
the
that
whole
received.
Navy was against him.
Two quick points. It looks like both the Bates had to die and the envelope itself. It both looks like whoever wrote those is trying to disguise his handwriting. But the other,
He's trying.
yeah,
Definitely.
The other point I want to make is that I watched the last 2 episodes of this podcast to kind of come up to speed. And the point that one of your main points, Nanette, is the only 2 people I've ever seen use CALIF period for California is Jack Terrence and whoever Zodiac is. Maybe it's the same person, but everyone puts capital C, capital A, or
Right.
they put Cal, but nobody puts CALIF. But over and over again, you see Zodiac do it and you see Jack do it.
Yes, I actually attribute that, and when I get into the Zodiac case, I actually talk about it, and it happens in some of the other serial killings where the communications have been attributed to Jack, but he doesn't seem to know, as smart as this man is, he doesn't seem to know the acronyms for the states. So he actually spells the first few letters out like you would do in January or March or February, the FEB. So he literally was, and we'll see it in other communications, like I said, where he continues to do that. You don't ever see him write the actual acronym unless it's Texas.
Well, that's where I can go into where I'm finding years later when I keep doing these. It's saying I'm on audio only. Oh, hold on. No, I'm not. There I am. I'm seeing a different message pop up. Anyways, to me, when I see something like that, it's this hint like go ahead and unabbreviate this and then anagram, which my eyes get big because I'm thinking if I got to unabbreviate everything that's there, it's going to be a big work to do. And then I'm going to be amazed at what the solve is going to say.
So when you see things like California, CALIF period, that's a sign to unabbreviate.
Yeah. And so I found out a couple of months ago or a year or so ago that that's not exactly a word, unabbreviate, but that's what you do when you're decoding Jack's world. You got to unabbreviate everything, fill in some of the acronyms that might be on the envelope, you're trying to second guess what might be happening, and then you look for the code key phrases or words. If I see something that's going to say JF and a capital K, I'm knowing that's a code key to this is going to be something about John F. Kennedy.
So when you're looking at these, you're looking also at the postmark, and so where it might say PM, you're going to actually take PM and you're going to turn that into post meridian, and you're going to use all of those letters.
Well, especially if it says 7, let's say 7:30 p.m. I'd be like, that's post meridian. And I'm finding out that whenever I saw AM or PM, it's to unabbreviate that too. And then I find all kinds of things like somebody's going to die next, because in meridian you got the letter D, I, and an E. And then if it's MM, he's sometimes referring to Marilyn Monroe, which was Bobby Kennedy's lover, blah, blah, blah. I'm going on, but it means that those are code keys, code key phrases and words, and start turning this way or that way to get the rest of the message.
Really quick, it's funny that you mentioned Marilyn Monroe, because she was part of the presentation I watched yesterday on Dorothy Kilgallen, because they died in quite similar ways. A combination of alcohol and barbiturates. And the guy that did the podcast, the attorney author, basically theorized that the Marilyn Monroe was a dry run for Kilgallen.
Oh, well, but it also makes sense to take her.
The MO was the same in both, basically.
Wow. Yeah, that's a little too close to home. You'd think that they would realize. I mean, I assume that you could have people that are overdosing, but surrounding the same type of cases, same type of people in the same type of era or time frame, you'd think they'd get a little creative and figure out ways of making them look different.
And journalist Lisa Howard went the same way, right around the same time, just right after Kilgallen. The one that had ties with, she was a famous journalist in the United States who the Kennedy administration used to have back channel negotiations with Castro and the Castro regime.
Wasn't that Kilgallen?
No, that's Lisa Howard.
Oh,
Lisa Howard.
Okay.
Yeah, she was killed too.
Gotcha.
So,
all right, so I
go back to Kilgallen real quick, because she mentioned NOLA, which is the realm, New Orleans, Louisiana. That's Marcello's territory. And like I said before, Marcello, his minions controlled Dallas too. And
correct.
Jack Ruby was affiliated with his minions in Dallas. And after the Jack Ruby trial, Dorothy Kilgallen, the first place she went to do more investigation, New Orleans. Then she went back to New York, and then they killed her.
Of course. Now, I know that I had also, for some reason, I think you had been coming up with I am, Harriette, in regards to some of the solves. So I have this in there underneath Cheri Jo Bates. I don't know if it's in, if it's still currently in your solve, if that has changed, but you had talked something about the International Association of Machinists, who operates half in Canada and half in the U.S., which is a very old society / union that has been around for more than 100 years. This was revolving around the steel and airplane industry, which is obviously not a huge coincidence when you take into consideration the hijacking of the D.B. Cooper caper, and that suspect actually wrote both to Canada and to the United States. So who is IM?
This International Association of Machinists, but it has to do with steel, all the things that they make. but I think they're interconnected at the time to HOPA's International Brotherhood of Teamsters Union, which was in, I think, that same area of Canada, still is. That's why
Yeah,
it's
I
called the
have the map.
International. So we're interconnecting there. You know,
I have the map up, and the International Association of Machinists in Aerospace, so they are also associated with NASA. They're literally 22 minutes away from Allen Memorial Institute, which in one short year from now, in this presentation, we're going to see MK Ultra move to Allen Memorial Institute, and the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers are just 22 minutes away in Canada. Not a coincidence, I don't think.
Yeah, I was going to say machinists are affiliated with military production and weaponry and aerospace and airplanes and all that thing. Yeah. Highly tied.
I'm seeing, you know, in my head right now with what I'm working on with the Texas killer cases, has to do with Abel, who was definitely connected to NASA.
Yes.
And would be interconnected with this also because he helped develop a better Saturn V to, you know, because he was a part of the moon quest of the Kennedys' moon quest to get us to the moon.
I know that at one point Chris Hopkins had indicated that the symbol on the Halloween card of the Zodiac was an actual stamp in steel, right? So it was some logo that was used in the steel industry.
That's what I was saying. That it was one of the marks of the steel industry. But I'm also wondering if it's the same mark that was used. My locals are going to be so happy with me about this, but I'm pointing in the direction where the North OHV is, where, let's see, it's the people that own it. Oh my God.
There's problems with your feed again, Harriette.
Yeah, your feed is bad. We're not able to hear you. I don't.
Okay, so let's try this. Well, maybe
the audio's good now.
Yeah, okay. Well, what I was getting at was that it's Procter and Gamble. They have a ranch still here, about several thousand acres, but they used to have like 70,000 acres. They basically owned all of what is now Lake Berryessa. But I think that same symbol is there. And to make a long story short, mercury used to be mined a lot there, and they needed mercury to, to get the atomic weapons going. And so it becomes a very small world when you see the possibilities. But I think that LF looking symbol might have something to do with their ranch, because they used to own the mercury mine there. So It could be a combination of both, and then they're saying, well, we'll just put that symbol on steel, because we were building the atomic bomb. so and then we're going to go to the moon after that.
So where did the International Association of Machinists come in? I thought that was in one of these particular solves, or do I have it in the wrong place?
No, you don't. It's just I was finding something about Lee Harvey Oswald in that, where he's saying, I am just a patsy. And there was a speech done. I think Nolan can chime in on that. The speech that was just done at the Steelworkers Union by Kennedy, I think shortly before he was killed. And that had to do with the connection to the International Machinists Union, because, they used steel. So
Correct.
I think the thing that there was a spy in, there were spies everywhere, but a big spy connected in there that was going to help kill the Kennedys. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about 1 minute. Is there anything you'd like to chime in on there, Nolan?
I pretty much said what I think I need to contribute today.
Awesome.
I can't wait till next week, though. This is getting fun.
Yeah, this is great.
Next week, we're going to actually enter into a couple of murders that are surrounding Cheri Jo Bates that could possibly actually be connected through evidence. I'm extremely interested in those particular murders. One, because they're radio men, which is exactly what Jack was. He also was in the Navy, and there's a possibility that the watch found at the Cheri Jo Bates crime scene is that of another victim's and not of the suspects, which would be a great clue to use to tie things in, or a fake clue to lead police in the wrong direction. And I think that automatically they may have just assumed it was the suspect, set it aside if there was nothing they could pull from it to make an identification. I don't know at what point in time, or if ever, they had actually attributed it to this particular murder of Mr. and Mrs. Swindle approximately 2 years or 1 year before Cheri Jo Bates, and then another cabbie that's actually killed in Oceanside in the same area where Dominguez and Edwards is killed. So, and I did do some more research on them as well. So we're going to reintroduce them again because I found additional evidence in the MO and the crime itself that neatly ties into some other crimes as well. So
yes, they're all Southern California murders, correct?
Correct.
Southern California, yeah. There's the Galita couple too.
Yes,
right?
yes, and
they're all pre-Bates, yeah.
Right, right. And initially, I had many of the Galita and Gaviota murders in here, and we know that some has now been attributed to the Golden State Murderer, and we'll talk about that as that comes about. I didn't take them out of the presentation just because we know that there are people that have been arrested and convicted of crimes that Jack has done. He admitted this himself. So I think it's worthy, even if they have a suspect that they have incarcerated, that there's a chance that individual, it may be guilty of some things, but may also be innocent of some things. So we'll see how that unfolds. All right. It looks like we're past our time, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.